Awesome. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second day of discussions of this PTG. So we were previously at the event-led removal room, and now we are getting back to discussing Manila-specific topics. So today we have two main topics to cover, which are yeah, pretty much technical that and internship and priorities. We can, if we have enough time at the end, we can try to pull some other topics, or we can also try to work with you into understanding if there's something else you'd like to add to the agenda that isn't there yet. Right. So let's get started. If you haven't watched yesterday's recordings yet, I would highly recommend you to. There were some nice discussions and some decisions on timelines for this cycle as well. So all of the recordings are already available in the OpenStack Manila YouTube channel, and I think I should link it. So yesterday, by the end of the day, all of the videos were available, and I've created a new playlist for it. So please take a look if you haven't. Thumbnail is needs some changes because it's not that visible as it was when I was editing it. So apologies for that. But this is the playlist. All of the three videos are already available. First of them is introductions and backup enhancements. We've covered all of the updates for CFFS drivers as well, and we had our retrospective where we talked about what went on in the Dalmatian cycle as well. Um, Decided on a couple of dates and some other important things for the next cycle. So if you haven't participated, don't worry, you can also catch up on the recordings. Let me link them here, and I think it's gonna be easier that way. So okay, so without further ado, first topic of the day is technical debt. We have a bunch of things to cover. First of them, I think we were just like at the event let removal room, so let's start with that. I think Gotham might be the best person and has the best context over here. A lot of things were going on in the TC room and also the event-led discussion room. So, would you like to cover this, Gotham?
Yeah, I no, I don't. I'm not sure about the best context, but I suppose we have to line up our work items, right? That was the idea behind
Yes.
the behind adding this as a tech debt. So there is a goal proposal that we ought to keep reporting back to, and keep following as things happen elsewhere. So we do rely on a lot of eventlet code that comes from libraries that we import. So it's an indirect dependency on eventlet, and I think the biggest use case of it would be the Manila Share Manager service, where we have uh, a peculiar use case of Oslo service, specifically to spawn off multiple processes to handle each backend, and there is some level of thread management that's happening inside these services. We have in the past conflated some of these things with we've made a choice to use native threads for some reasons, and for many things we're relying on um, eventlet thread handling. um, so that's the up and down of this. We've got to probably isolate all of those use cases and try to find those parallels, as the Oslo folks are working on adding more options besides eventlet. And besides, I think there is a pretty good discussion on the console scripts, and some simplification for our developer tooling as well, including how we're setting up DevStack and what we're shipping as part of the Manila packages. One way to invoke the WSGI service is through that console script, and I see that a lot of projects are removing that console script so that you cannot start the WSGI server from the command line the way we could in the past releases. And there was a concerted effort to actually support um, using WSGI as an application from an existing web service, and that was done so many releases ago. So we now have, I think, I mean, two or three different ways of spawning that stuff. So I guess that'll be an easy win to try to sunset that console script, and state and go fix all our documentation and state that we only have this particular way of kicking off the WSGI application. And within the WSGI application, I suppose there are some more changes, because I mean, we are relying on Oslo Services WSGI implementation, so that is going to see a significant number of changes, because again, it is an eventlet based service. And so it does a lot of eventlet mechanisms that we are no longer going to have. We plugged it into the WSGI application, sorry, into the web service way of things. But I suppose I can draw a lot of parallels between what was going on in the event-led discussion with respect to Nova, and we'll have the same approach. I suppose as long as the web server allows multiple workers, and each one of these is a different process, and each one of them could just be a single threaded process as far as Manila API is concerned, because I mean, most of our interactions are all assuming that we are running single threaded. There isn't a sort of, we don't really have the mechanism that took much of the discussion out there in the event letter removal team, which was the scatter gather approach that Nova has. I think are it's a much simpler API service, and most of the interactions are going to be with the database. And so if we're making a database call, it is a blocking call. So it makes no sense for us to think of multi-thread parallelism in within a single API service, because we've never dealt with it that way. Um, because it, like somebody mentioned at the eventlet removal call, this is the sort of thing that we're not even prepared to handle the deadlocks and things for. Um, so that is probably the first action item after getting rid of the console script, and updating documentation and so on. And the other parts, there is one peculiar use case of Eventlet to create a pool of threads for SSH connections. And this has been heavily used in third-party drivers more than any of the entry first-party ones. And so this might require some more testing. So these can be native threads, except we probably have to be putting an upper bound on how many threads we can maintain in a thread pool and stuff like that. And again, these threads had no interaction with each other. So the threads were mainly so that backend services can have parallelism. So basically, your driver could receive multiple requests at the same time, and each request can have its own dedicated SSH connection and not really block on another. That's happening because it could slow things down. Um, so that will require our own reimplementation using probably native threads, and that's the next approach we can take, which is independent of everybody else that's doing this sort of migration. Um, and the fourth and final thing, I think, is to adapt whatever is coming as part of Oslo service, and do some testing with it. So a couple of things with the Oslo service approach, right? One of them is using these two libraries, Cortidalon and Futurist, to create a service that provides all of those upper level interfaces that we are worried about. So we are using fixed interval looping calls. to run our periodic tasks, and the periodic tasks are mostly isolated to the share manager service. There are no periodic tasks, if I remember right, from the API or the scheduler to worry about. So in the share manager service, there are a whole bunch of periodic tasks, some of which are running on native threads today, but a lot of them will have to migrate through whatever the approach, parallel approach that Oslo service provides us. Um, so that's probably going to be most of the work, and the most heavily, most heavy lifting work, because I feel like that's where we would need a lot of the testing and performance numbers that we were talking about in the other room. Um, so technically, we have to try to figure out how healthy our rally tests are, and probably figure out if there are any missing pieces, and find a way to correlate what we have currently without any of these changes to to when we make the change. So we want to make sure there are no performance regressions, unexpected ones at least. Um, and what would that look like for us? Let's say you were able to create 1,000 shares in X seconds. If that drastically falls, that would just show us that we've somehow lost some parallelism. And with the default configuration, we would need to make sure that that sort of thing doesn't happen. That sort of performance regression doesn't happen. Um, yeah, so I think what I can do is, I mean, I can kick off an Etherpad. This is something that would be Manila specific, and isolate all of those places which are eventlet use cases in our repository. And you will see, there's some guidelines to do this on the eventlet removal wiki page, because this is going to look a lot similar across projects. That I mean, for example, we were cloned off of no Cinder, which was cloned off of Nova, so the patterns remain. So it's easy to identify very quickly whether something is using eventlet or not. Um, so that would be the first task, and once we have that, we can I just was spitballing this plan with you, but we can formalize it, and we can figure out what all we can do in the epoxy cycle. I suppose the easy low hanging fruit, such as removing the console um, script, and starting to look at the performance scale tests, whether they are adequate, um, and probably even the SSH pools aspect of it can be safely worked on for the epoxy cycle without worrying about regressions as much, because these are still things that are under our control, and we're not relying on Oslo to provide any solutions for this. An interesting part, I think, is the awaitlet, the library, and the implementation for Oslo DB to use a async IO based engine facade. And I am curious how that'll look, and I suppose somebody like Mike Bayer or Hervé might be experimenting with a specific OpenStack service to see to have that engine facade working. So we have to keep an eye out on this. It feels, I mean, we just migrated away from the legacy engine facade. So it's a huge task when we try to switch over these engine facades. Quite a lot of code rewrite in the SQL Alchemy layer. Um, I hope that's not the case with this one. It might be built on top of the other one, but we need to make sure that I mean, the biggest concern over there is if we are expecting a synchronous call, we don't want to certainly make it async without ensuring that we're able to handle the the responses, the exceptions, and any waits that need to happen, and so on. Um, so I think keeping an eye on that discussion through this epoxy cycle is one more thing, one more goal. Um, right. That's pretty much it, I think. So we are going to try to have a bi-weekly meeting across the community for this TC goal. And that's going to be part of that pop-up team. So I can bring in some notes from that bi-weekly meeting to the Manila, meetings or team, our own discussions. But if you look at the goal, I think we are not dictating what needs to be done in the epoxy cycle. We're hoping some things are going to be figured out. If you got the reference, it's lining the ducts, but not really. Um, you know, Sorry, that metaphor actually goes really bad after. So just keeping them all lined up is what we plan to do in the epoxy cycle. So we're not making any major changes, basically.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that was amazing. Yeah, overview of what's going on and what we need, like to get done at the end of it. I don't think I have any questions, but yeah, I would like to thank you for volunteering to take a look at this for us and participating in the meetings and getting the feedback. I'll also try to join some of these meetings and be close to this. So yeah,
Yeah, awesome. On the rally side, I think we could use some help because I suppose we've had. I mean, we wrote tests a long time ago, and we've not actually gone and um, you know increase the test coverage or something in that case. It's been the same set of tests from a long time, and part of the reason I think it was that the OpenStack Rally is actually something which has less number of maintainers, but they are pretty cooperative, and they definitely welcome contributions, but it's usually just Andre, merging patches and so on. So we might need to explore if that is still the best tool to kind of qualify the work that we're doing. I know there's been quite a lot of Manila stuff that's being added in Browbeat as well. And when I say a lot, it just means adding some presence in it, but it doesn't exercise 90% of the API, right? So it probably exercises a few things, and it does it a lot of different number of times. So it gives us a vehicle to make sure that something like provisioning shares, that part is covered. But what about anything else, like taking I think the snapshots is well covered, but let's say replica creation, reverting to snapshot, or any of these other complex APIs, we don't have any coverage in Rally or Browbeat. So there's that that we can start working on for this cycle parallelly, by throwing in a bunch of tests opportunistically.
yep.
All right, cool. We can tag me with most of the action items in this, and we can probably discuss this again during the weekly meetings.
Yeah, sounds great. Um, I think it's gonna be just like our back. We'll talk about this for a long time.
We will,
Yeah,
yes. And we're not going to create any bugs or BP, I think, for this specifically. There is a common what is that topic for
yeah,
get it work, but that's just about it. but I think at some point, as things move on, we need to probably write any docs or fix any docs if things are changing in the dev, admin, refs, and so on.
Agree.
There should be no impact on the client projects. That might be something easy to put in the list and remove as done. Um, it's mostly all the work must be in Manila.
Yeah. I think considering performance and if like that thing's gonna mess up, I'm not sure if we would see some differences in Tempest tests. Like the time they are running could somehow, if it's messing up too much with like something, maybe the test time execution will change, but it's difficult to quantify. Like only considering that, because that's a lot of variance for us when that job runs, right? Like it could be like a slower machine or stuff like that.
Yeah,
So yeah.
totally. I mean, we'll get to know only if there are some massive changes to the timeline with Tempest, pretty much. But if you want to profile anything, Tempest would not give you that much of
Yes.
a good view out into this.
Yep.
All right, cool. Any questions? Uh,
Hi. I don't know if it's a place to, or if it's the right meeting to discuss this topic, but we, I opened a blueprint to explain that we would like to be able to delete share network subnet when shares use it. Um, and we already implemented something to do it in our own fork of Manila. And we would be interested in getting this back into the upstream. So yes, I would like to discuss it with all of you to know whether it might be interesting to integrate this in Manila, and if the way we implemented it might be the right way to go.
I'm just adding the topic, Sylvan, to the end of this stuff. Thanks for the link there. So the people that would be interested might be the folks that actually added the support to add and manipulate the shared network subnets. And apparently, currently they are in the Cinder room, finishing up some Cinder conversations. So,
Okay.
is it possible for us to chat about this tomorrow? Maybe if I don't know if we have time, Carlos, on the agenda tomorrow, or is it too packed? Uh, you're muted.
Sorry. We might, yeah. There's like a bunch of topics tomorrow.
I see.
But yeah, I can try to squeeze it in. Honestly,
Either that, or maybe if folks start joining in after the Cinder session, we can chat about it in just a bit.
yes, yeah. That sounds good too.
Yeah, it's okay for me tomorrow too. No
Perfect.
problem.
Thank you. And thanks for creating the blueprint. I
Yes.
was going to ask you, I mean, first things first, I think you mentioned this on the Manila channel as well. So there is a spec for the original implementation, and I was wondering if you had a look at that.
I might have, but I looked at this a long time ago, but I don't really remember
Yeah.
what was in this spec. Do you mean the spec for multiple subnets
Yeah,
or?
that's the one. And
Yes.
and and in that, I think one of the use cases was to delete, but I think we didn't. end up merging it. So we may not have a reference in this specification itself.
Yeah, because the way subnet deletion was implemented before we modified it to suit our needs
Hmm.
was seems not to be compatible with the fact that there is now multiple subnet. For example, it deletes uh, it deletes share server when I'm not sure, but I think it was deleting share server when the subnet was deleted, but the share server might have multiple subnet now, so it's not relevant, I think.
Hmm.
Uh, there is a check that ensures that no shares is attached,
Yeah.
so there is no subnet anymore, but I'm not really sure that this should be enforced and not be possible to delete a subnet
Yeah.
at all. Because, for example, in our use case, have uh, we might have shares that are used by some compute that is publicly accessible, for example. And then a customer might want to reuse this share in a different context from, for example, private network or a custom network behind the VLAN or whatever. And so public network should be removed from share server, for example, to use back IP address that is a limited resource because a set of publicly addressable IP are limited.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. And I was just looking at the spec also to see if there was anything in the call outs around what we may not support. But somehow I think we only had that discussion on Garrett now that I think of it. Um, so would it be possible to write this up, this proposal up as a specification? And it doesn't have to be such a big spec because it looks like, I mean, this is just one action, right? We're just trying to remove a subnet from a share network. So it might affect, you know, at most one share server. Um, uh, am I saying that right? It is, will we have more than one share server in a subnet? Uh, it is
Yeah, we
possible.
can.
Yeah, we can. Okay, so we might affect a few share servers that are there on that subnet. Um, as part of this deletion without affecting I mean, anything else if the share servers are connected to a different subnet. I can picture that it would mean that we would need some action from the shared drivers to clean that up, um, clean that network connection up, and that's about it. Not really clean up any share servers or any shares, because they are still exported and everything is still fine on the network path through a different place. So it may not require a whole lot of you know design as such, um, but I could be wrong. I would really like to see some folks in the room that have these DHSS2 drivers, right? And I want to know if there is any limitation from them, to unplug share servers from an existing thing without deleting it. Because so far, if you look at the way the implementation goes, every time you unplug, it's only because you're deleting it.
Yeah, it
Uh,
makes sense.
yeah, I don't anticipate any problem, but it's worth creating something. So have you are you aware of the spec process?
That's the first time I'm contributing doing a spec, but
Okay.
from what I understand, I have to create a pull request on the Manila spec repository,
Yes.
and I've also created a blueprint to track the change. I don't know if it's too early, maybe, or
No, it's not.
It's perfect
It's the
timing.
right time, and I think you're doing the right thing by bringing it to the PTG, because usually, I mean, this is where folks, you know, come in and give you some feedback and things like that. Besides Garrett, um, so it's a very good approach that you have. So I think we have a couple of folks in the room that might actually have looked at this. So Carlos, can we take the time now to
Yes,
talk about this?
absolutely.
All right. Okay. So hi Maurice, hi Chuan, and just bringing you directly into the conversation here that just started.
Hi. Hi.
Um, Silvan here was trying to propose a way to delete a subnet from a share network and affect any share servers that are on that share network. Um, this builds on top of the multiple subnets work that NetApp folks and you folks have contributed. And what this means is, I think, I mean, Silvan, you should go ahead and explain what the consequences are or why reasoning for it.
Yes. So we tried to implement something that might not be the best way to do it, but as as removing subnets might result in disruption for existing shares, we added the force parameter to the endpoint that allow to delete subnet. When subnet is deleted, if force parameter is set, we don't care about the check that ensure no share is attached to the subnet. And in this case, we had to perform share server deletion later because we don't know if it still has subnet. So what is done is we start by removing subnet, and the latest function that deletes subnet is responsible to check whether there is a remaining subnet on the share server, and if there isn't, the share server is deleted. I don't know if it's clear. Because previously what was done is when we delete subnet, we are sure that there is no share attached to the subnet. So we can immediately delete the share server, but now that the share server might still be used by other subnets, uh, we should rather, I think, delete subnet, and the method that deletes subnet is responsible to call another method that delete the share server only if the share server has no subnet anymore.
Yeah, thanks. That makes sense. I suppose. I mean, a few questions come to mind. Is I think the way this works right now is if you have um, multiple share servers in and under a given share network, and you know this could be on different entirely different backends, and so definitely different drivers associated with this with each of these. So if you spawn off a call to say let's delete the subnet, you'd have first probably understand whether these share servers are plugged into different networks besides the subnet that you have.
Yes, that's it. In our implementation, however, we did it this way because we allow to delete all subnet from a share server. Uh,
Hmm.
do we really? Because I remember that when we talk, you say that we shouldn't be able to remove all subnet in a share network.
Yeah, exactly. So because at that point you're disconnecting that share server. So any shares that are there, they don't have any more exports.
Yeah, but we didn't implement it this way because we thought that it's up to the people that call the API to know whether they want their share to be connected or not. So, well, if the share network has no subnet anymore, we can just call back a add subnet API to add one back. So there is no problem with this, except disruption for existing share that we might acknowledge by passing the force parameter. So,
Uh, I mean, I might have some questions on this. So first one is in the initial implementation or the initial idea you had, would like you be able to delete all of the subnets from the share server, because that would mean like translating to something that, for example, like is all of the IPs being removed of the share server, and can a share server actually exist that in the backend, that way in the backend?
yeah, it can. I don't know if all backends have this ability because we are only using NetApp backend. But for the NetApp, at least it is possible.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that would
Maybe
be,
there are other constraints for other backends. So.
yes. Yeah, that's kind of complicated because it's going to be also like a concept or something that we kind of don't have in vanilla yet. It will be like a share without export location or export paths. Um, yeah, and I mean those export paths, they would also need to be updated as soon as the subnet is added to them.
Is there a use case for this?
Uh,
So having this share without a subnet? I mean, I can see the use case in wanting to move to a different subnet, but
no, there is no
we,
real
we could
use
we could we could
case.
we could achieve that without the step in between where there is no
This
subnet
is more
anymore.
for convenience to be able to add or remove subnet in whatever order. So this way, if you have subnet A that you want to replace with subnet B, you could either add subnet B and remove A, or remove remove A and add B. It doesn't matter. But it, for our use case, it wouldn't be an issue if we couldn't delete the latest subnet of a share network.
I see. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a cool use case. I think removing being able to remove the share network or the subnet, it makes sense, at least for me. Um, in a sense of, like, yeah, you want to reprovision the networking and you want to be able to remove one subnet or one interface from the share server, and you want it to land in a different subnet. The only thing that, like, is still in my head, like, it's allowing to remove all of them, because that would be like a share sitting there for some time, and it doesn't have like an export path, and we can, like, no one would be able to mount it by the time, like, during the time that it does not have any subnets assigned to the share server. So yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, what are other people's thoughts on this? But I think it will kind of have one of the things that, like, it's one of the main things about a share, like being able to mount them. Um,
Yeah,
and
we're
we
trying to
wouldn't.
avoid the PEPCAC
Yeah,
issue. Um, and I think we do a lot of this in the API, and especially because this API, which is to add subnets, remove subnets. I mean, the remove subnets doesn't work, doesn't exist right now, but the API to add subnets is intentionally scoped to the end user, so that you as a tenant user in a cloud can actually make these actions. And so we try very hard to prevent you from breaking something. So with that in the thing, it probably makes sense to avoid removing the last subnet, just so that it is it is a deliberate thing. So you basically have to have a subnet that you can export the shares to, because if it feels like there is no use case for unexported shares, then we probably don't need to support a thing where it says you can delete them out of order.
Okay. Yes, that makes sense.
This is yeah, I agree with that too. Um, but just like out of curiosity, I think in the spec, if you're like writing some stuff about it, I think it might have some impact on. Not sure. No, I don't remember if NetApp supports like multiple snapshots or writable replicas. I don't think it does at the moment, right? But I believe these would also impact those features, because I mean, if you are able to mount something, it means that it has like an IP address, and you have like an export path, so you can mount it. So I think it would be nice to have a call out on the spec as well, mentioning the impact that these other resources will have that depend on the export path to be mounted.
All right. With respect to the thing itself, Sylvan, if you've not looked at this repo in the past, there is a spec template here. I'm going to just link it on the Etherpad, and there is also a light spec template at some point. Just a second. Which is I don't think we have one, but it looks a lot like this. So let me link an example. So you don't have a whole lot of things to add. You can choose to use this template, where you're just describing what the intended design is and so on. You can expand on those as much as you want, but it gives people an opportunity to try to come up and um, you know vet the design properly with you. Instead of
Yes,
directly encoding.
that's a template for the spec for the subnet deletions.
Yes, exactly. So
Oh,
if you could write something up, either as one of these bigger specs or even as a light spec, that'd be cool.
okay. Where did you send the link?
Oh, it's on the Etherpad. So if you're looking
Mm,
on, yeah, Carlos just dropped the Etherpad link on the chat here. And if you don't have this opening automatically on your on your Meetpad, you can click on the ellipsis, the three dots at the bottom, and say open shared document. No, actually, hold on a second. I think our shared document is the wrong one right
Yeah.
over here, Carlos.
Yes.
Okay, let me,
Sorry for that,
sorry,
but
I take
yes.
that back. Nope, don't do that. I'm just going to add that in the shared document just in case. But yeah, please, it's in that link that Carlos just shared.
Hello, Tron here. Can I
Yeah,
can I
go
tell
ahead.
you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about how to use this. Uh, Should we delete the export locations manually before tearing down, removing the subnet from the network? Or it will do automatically remove all the export locations from the share when we delete subnet? I think in a quite complicated setup in a very big projects, the customers can, in one tenant, there could be multiple share networks, multiple subnets. It could be quite complicated setup. And if the user somehow miss one share in the subnet and forget that it is actually still attached to some server, then doing these operations could be dangerous, to removing automatically the useful export locations. So maybe we could consider some more safe approach.
Silvan, were you going to take that question?
The point is about the risk of removing export location.
Yes.
Currently, I think in our implementation, it make 1 year, so it's a bit far, but from what I remember, we remove export location associated to the interface that we removed on the share server. So when deleting a subnet, we added an interface to the drivers to be able to remove a corresponding interface. And so when this is deleted, we also remove the export location from database. I don't know if it could be harmful, but we are using it we have been using it for about 1 year and didn't see any issue, but we might have a specific use case. So,
Can I add to that? So technically, I mean, Manila has no way of knowing who is mounted the share, right? So we could, you know, one of the ways to prevent an accidental deletion would be to make sure this isn't the delete API for the subnets themselves. So what I heard Sylvan saying is that this is going to add a force parameter, and so this is going to be a new post API against that endpoint, requiring a force equals true or something to be set in the body. Is that right? So
yeah, that's the proposed solution to avoid unwanted disruption. But
yeah, so
might be.
yeah, that would be the way we're handling this sort of thing even elsewhere as well. Except this would be the one of the first things. Not really. Not. I mean, sorry, I can draw parallels, but this is one gate for it. But the task of removing the exports from Manila itself is going to be performed by the drivers after they delete the subnet from their sorry, delete the logical interface or whatever it is that's connected to the share server, and the ports are cleared from the storage machine itself. The share driver returns to the share manager and should have an updated list of export paths, and it should be able to remove the ones that pertain to that particular subnet that was being unplugged. um, so that I'm hoping is something we can enforce through this work. So if we make the API changes, we also have to follow that up with each driver that supports it to make sure that the export paths are properly updated. So there's nothing manually that needs to be nothing manual that needs to be done, except these shares are mounted on workloads that are outside of Manila, and that probably is probably what you mean, right, Sean, when you say clients would have to unmount and make changes to their workloads.
Um, yeah, I think the force delete API could be a safeguard to this. Yeah. Well, to alert the user that this is a dangerous operation, that they
Yeah,
should be more careful about this. Yeah,
yeah,
I
absolutely.
agree with that. Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, we are not using this. I'm just thinking when we use that, yeah, it just could be dangerous at
Yeah,
some point. Yeah, it's a dangerous operation. Yeah, that's all.
makes sense. Right. Anything else on the topic?
No, nothing to add. Just small question. We really often see reference to neutron in the code base, and we're wondering whether this shouldn't be moved to the network driver part, the neutron network driver part, to avoid being tightly coupled with neutron to manage networks.
Yes, I think so. So you must see it in the network driver, including the add subnet logic is in the network driver itself, right?
Yes,
Yeah. So
because
I
I
would
don't know
expect.
if it's common to use Manila outside of OpenStack and with Neutron, but with we in our implementation we use our custom network driver to
Mm.
work with a different infrastructure. So we sometimes see things that seems to be specific to Neutron, like, but that shouldn't really be. For example, what did we saw last time? Um, uh, the naming of the share server during migration, the naming of the share server that was created on the other side was decided depending on neutron network ID, I think. Uh,
Inside the shared driver, I suppose. Yeah.
yes, and so we managed to find a workaround, which is to set a neutron network ID with the value that we want, but ideally it might be an interface of the network driver that gives this value and that doesn't depend on something related to neutron.
I agree with you. So this seems like a problem within the NetApp driver, though. Um, so it because we do hand out quite a lot of information from the network driver to through the port create call. And NetApp is supposed to work with both Neutron and standalone. There are two options within the tree itself. So I suppose there's something that the NetApp driver is looking at as far as metadata and naming it with the Neutron network ID for a reason. But
Yes.
That feels like a bug. I think you should, if you want to file that, I mean, folks here can probably try to help take a look at it.
Okay.
Yeah, I see. So I see it a lot of different places. The IP spaces are named after neutron net ID and so on. Um, I'm not sure if there is enough metadata to replace that, but maybe that's something we can go work on. Out of curiosity, what network driver is this? If it's not neutron?
It's our own flavor of network driver. So we have a service of IP address management that does interfacing with various teams in our company.
Mhm.
And this service is responsible to provide addressing and so the our network driver is an kind of a webhook network driver that call an external service.
Okay, makes sense. And does this hand out any? Let's say with this, you know, mode of operation, I presume you're going to have a VLAN, or is this a flat network?
We might use both,
Okay,
but recently we have moved to using mainly VLAN.
okay. So I was wondering if there is any ID that we can pick up from the from these calls that we can pass down to the driver layer. That might actually help the NetApp folks, into thinking how they can avoid the use of neutron net ID and such.
Uh, didn't understand. You mean providing an ID to which call?
So technically, if there is a port create call, right? That's the one that you're implementing in your network driver.
Okay.
And so suppose there is some identifier that you can pick up from your environment, that we can rely on for naming things like inside the NetApp driver IP spaces, and I suppose locks. There are some locks that seem to be using the neutron net ID. Um, I don't know what else. I'm just looking at the code base right now to see where all neutron net ID is being used inside the NetApp driver. But what they're looking for is something that ties a VLAN from your network, so that they can coordinate some things within the driver.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah,
Just an identifier to find the associated VLAN.
exactly. So if that ID can be picked up in some API call, I think they'll be happy. Uh, and that's the part that'll be useful to replace the things. So it's a neat idea. So if you want to open a bug, somebody can uh, help you by looking at it. And
Yes, that doesn't seem too complicated.
Awesome. Any other comments, questions?
Uh, Hi, Carlos. This is Sai Kumar from NetApp. We actually joined little late. Any questions for NetApp? Please drop us. We will come back. We had to present something in Cinder, so we joined late. So
Hey,
please
sir.
reach out to us. And, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no worries. I think yeah, we're good. We've had like this discussion on allowing forced delete on a subnet, and yeah, there's like a big use for this. Also, with they're using the NetApp driver. But yeah,
Okay.
Sylvan mentioned he's planning to work on this, and we talked about writing a spec. So yeah, I think the next step would be like looking at the spec, and we can gather feedback from everyone. So
Okay.
yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Apologies for joining late. Yeah.
No,
The
no
document
problem.
you covered, I think. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries, man. All right. So thank you very much, Ivan, for bringing this up. Yeah, it was great to have you joining us and sharing this topic. Um, I'm excited to see you working on this. And yeah, I think the discussions for this can follow on this back to you. And if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I will be happy to help you out with that.
Thank you too. I'm happy to have some feedback on this topic.